Welcome back to Seahawks Central News, your source for the latest in local news and entertainment. I'm Anna Phillips.
And I'm Trevor Bray. This week we've got information on the latest Wilmington phone scam, a visit from Academy Award-winning screenwriters, and on Talk of the Walk we will ask students how they felt about Google's logo on Easter.
We'll also catch up with host Jessica Ferrer with this week's local and international political events, and with Chris Vickery for Critics on Campus.
Remember to check us out on Facebook and at tealtv.org. Seahawks Central News airs every Monday through Thursday on both TLN and the Seahawk channel.
Don't forget to check out Trey Owings and Seahawks Central Sports on the half hour.
Stay tuned because Seahawks Central News starts right now.
UNCW's Department of Music will host its 31st annual Guest Artist Jazz Festival this weekend. Artists from UNCW and other parts of the country will perform throughout the days of August 4th, 5th, and 6th in Beckwith Recital Hall. Headliner Jack Wilkins, a professor of music at the University of South Florida School of Music, will play on Thursday and Friday, with the second headliner, the Seamus Blake Quintet, closing the show on Saturday night. Tickets range from $5 to $10 and must be purchased in advance from the Beckwith Recital Hall box office.
An eye for an eye is what Arapahoe County prosecutors are claiming when it comes to the murder trial of James Holmes. Holmes is being charged with the death of 12 Aurora movie theater attendees from last July. Holmes and his attorney were hoping to reach a deal in which he would plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence without parole. However, District Attorney George Brockler rejected the bid, saying, in this case, for James Egan Holmes, justice is death.
As of today, the student government elections at UNCW are over. The elections began during the last week of March and had to be continued with a runoff election for vice president. Check back with us for winners.
Kaufman, Texas remains scared and eerie as a second prosecutor has been killed in only a span of 2 months. On January 31st, Assistant Prosecutor Mark Hassey died in a daytime shooting outside the North Texas County's courthouse. Now, District Attorney Mike McClelland and his wife Cynthia were found dead in their home after being gunned down this past Saturday. According to CNN's report, the killings followed warning that a white supremacist group might be preparing to take revenge on law enforcement officials who targeted them in 2012. Officials are still investigating if the two shootings were related.
The last show of the season is upon us here at UNCW. Prom, a new Paradise Laboratories production, gives a new twist to the classic tales of high school football games and the ultimate event, prom. With each production, the cast is reinvented. The actors themselves get to create the characters they play. They're even given Facebook identities. The show will run the weekends of April 11th through the 14th and the 18th through the 21st. Tickets are available through the Keenan box office.
The red carpet was rolled out at the Dove as the Academy Awards came to Wilmington. You may remember Nat Faxon and Jim Rash for their Oscar-winning film The Descendants, starring George Clooney. Well, they're extending a special invitation to UNCW students to view an early screening of their new film, The Way, Way Back, both written and directed by the Academy Award winners. The screening was held Tuesday, April 2nd in the Lumina Theater. The film is not scheduled to hit the big screen until this summer. Seahawks Central News reporter Hannah Brewer had the chance to interview both Nat Faxon and Jim Rash.
On Monday, April 1st and Tuesday, April 2nd, Academy Award-winning screenwriters Nat Faxon and Jim Rash visited UNCW campus to talk to students about their professional journey and for an advanced screening of their new film, The Way, Way Back. I sat down with them to ask them a few questions. Welcome, Nat and Jim. Thank you for sitting down and talking to us today. First of all, can you explain to us why you guys are here on the UNCW campus, what you guys are doing here?
We're re-enrolling.
Re-enrolling.
Going back to the beginning. I've got a couple of auditions. It's going really and I got a big test.
Well, we're happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Jim's
you.
in undergrad and I'm actually in grad school.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, okay. Yeah, no, we're here. We've yesterday and today we've been sort of chatting with students about various things. You know, from adaptation, the process of adapting a novel into a screenplay, to talking about writing and directing, and today a little bit more focus on sort of the idea of like we graduated from college, now what? Sort of the idea of the journey to New York or Hollywood or into any of those categories, acting, writing, and directing. Yeah.
Becoming a star.
Becoming a star. Yeah, because we know the trick.
All right. Okay, what would be your biggest piece of advice for students who are wanting to pursue, you know, a career in writing, directing, acting, and, you know, maybe eventually go out to Hollywood? You know, how to get started? What would be your biggest piece of advice?
I mean, I think you know, it's challenging in the sense that there's no one great way to sort of do this, because I think everyone's journey is different. I can only speak for myself to say that I did do that thing where I sort of jumped in the car and I drove across the country, and I got there and I knew a couple of things, you know, as far as like places to crash and get started, but then I just sort of researching in that place. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't now sort of know a lot more than I did at the time, because we were working, I don't even know if the internet was around. But, you know, because I think going out there and even when you find out, when you get to LA, it is, no one has the same exact journey. And I think looking back, I'm glad that I wish I hadn't spent so much time listening to the people who said, oh, you can't do it that way, it doesn't work that way, you know, on all cases, you know, oh, you can't write that, or you can't do it that way. Because I think that's not actually true. I think the idea is to go out there. Or if you're a writer, write every day. You know, read everything. If you're into directing, watch movies. You know, find a way into even like an internship, which would give you insight into anything. Because everything out there really is about, you know, going up this sort of ladder. And so the smallest thing can become something much bigger, and it's just patience. Right. You know, and in the meantime, you know, you're being creatively active. You know, as an actor, get involved with performing, being on stage, whatever you can. I mean, it was a long-winded
That was
answer.
a lot of answers. No, I don't know if I should say any. No, I would. I usually tell people the best thing they can do is create opportunities for themselves to be seen. If you're an actor, to try to get your script out there and have people read it. If you're writing, whatever you can do to showcase your ability, you know, whether it be put on a play with a bunch of friends and get people to come see it, or you know, like Jim said, constantly write, get your scripts out into the world. I think the more proactive you can be, the better, just because nothing really comes to you in that town unless you know, instigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank you guys so much for sitting down and talking to us. We're really happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for sitting down and talking with us.
In turning our attention to political affairs, host Jessica Ferrer is here to help keep you informed. Jessica?
I'm Jessica Ferrer, bringing you the latest in local, national, and international political news. North Korea has declared a state of war with South Korea. Last week, the country made that announcement and also made threats against the United States. Ever since North Korea conducted a third nuclear weapons test in February, tensions have been high. The third nuclear weapons test breached UN sanctions. South Korean and U.S. officials have said that although they are taking precautions, it is believed the threats are being made are just tough talk. However, the U.S. did send F-22 fighter jets to South Korea to show their status as an ally. Technically, North Korea and South Korea have been at war for over 60 years. U.S. Senator Kay Hagan of North Carolina has expressed her support of marriage equality. Hagan, a Democrat, made her announcement on her Facebook page. Hagan wrote that we should not tell people who they can love or who they can marry. She was one of the few Democratic senators left who had not expressed their support of gay marriage yet. Hagan was also against Amendment 1, which was passed with 61% of voter approval. Re-election for 2014 is approaching, and Hagan's seat is seen as one of the most vulnerable. She made her announcement at a time when she is being targeted for hot-button issues and up for re-election. The full post on Hagen's thoughts about marriage equality can be read on her Facebook. Talks about gay marriage have been heating up since the Supreme Court heard cases on the legality of California's Proposition 8 and DOMA last week. The bipartisan House group working on an immigration reform plan is hoping to release their deal next week. Key pieces of the plan, however, are causing concern and being seen as technical issues. This includes the cost of immigration reform and the pathway to citizenship for 11 million immigrants in the U.S. The plan has been described as not too different from the Senate's Gang of Eight, another bipartisan group working on immigration reform as well. Their proposal is almost finished and set to be released around the same time. The House's plan would make it more than 10 years for undocumented immigrants to get a green card and would require paying back taxes. They would also have to admit that some law was broken and gain a proficiency in English. The 10-year waiting period to gain a green card is said to help lower the cost of the bill. It could take longer for a married couple to get a divorce in North Carolina. Instead of a 1-year waiting period, 3 senators have introduced the Healthy Marriage Act, a bill that will change it to 2 years. In addition to waiting an extra year to be divorced, a couple would have to complete courses on improving communication skills and conflict resolution. These courses would not have to be completed together. The Healthy Marriage Act would also require completion of a course that's also at least 4 hours on the impact of divorce on children. Other changes include allowing a couple to live together during their 2-year waiting period. Republican Senator Austin Allerian of Hickory is the primary sponsor of the bill, which was filed Thursday, March 28th. As always, thanks again for joining me in this week's rundown of the world's political affairs. From DC to the Dub, I'm Jessica Ferrer.
Google evoked mixed emotions as they opted to use Cesar Chavez's picture instead of one Easter-related this past Sunday. Barack Obama proclaimed March 31st as Cesar Chavez Day in 2011 to honor the Latino civil rights leader. However, Google has received immense backlash from religious groups due to their disappointment Easter was not admired. Reporter Aki Suzuki is out on Chancellor's Walk to find out what students make of Google's decision.
Hi, I'm Aki Suzuki for Seahawks Central News, and I'm right here on Chancellor's Walk for this week's Talk of the Walk. This week, we're asking students how they feel about how Google used Cesar Chavez's image as its homepage background this past Easter instead of any Easter-themed image. Although Google hasn't used an Easter-themed image on Easter since the year 2000, this did spark a lot of controversy. So we're trying to see how students feel about it.
Well, Google really is entitled to their own opinion. They are their own company. They can decide what they really want to do. However, I know some people, mostly the Christian belief and background, really have a problem with that because I know that's a really celebrated time of the year, actually.
To be honest, I didn't really notice the image because I was Googling, but I didn't really take a moment to pause and look at Cesar Chavez's photos.
Easter is a super religious holiday, and it doesn't apply to everyone, so to a lot of people, especially in the United States, it's just a regular Sunday, so I don't think it's a huge issue.
I'm not really personally offended, but I mean, I don't really care what Google does.
I think that they should do whatever they want, and I love all their pictures because they're usually cool.
I think that Google can, do whatever they want with their image. It's their company. They've made it. I don't really think they should care what other people think as long as they think it's right.
Google is a private company. As long as what they're doing is legal, I don't see, why anyone should tell them what to do with their time and with their own website.
I think that Google should stand for whatever principles that they think that they need to represent, and honestly, if people have a problem with that, it is America. We have freedom of speech. They're allowed to say what they want to say.
It's notable to see how most students use the fact that Google's a business rather than their own religious or personal affiliations. It was also interesting how some students didn't even notice. We definitely have a very diverse group of students on this campus. For Seahawks Central News, Teal TV, I'm Aki Suzuki.
Nelson Mandela is continuing to improve after a brief stay in the hospital last week. The former South African president and Nobel Peace Prize winner has been in and out of the hospital with a lung infection. He was most recently treated for pneumonia, having excess fluid removed from his chest. Mandela's struggle with his lungs began early in life during his 27-year imprisonment as a political prisoner where he contracted tuberculosis. Mandela's health has been noticeably declining since his release from prison in 1990. He has not made a single public appearance since the World Cup in 2010.
In this week's Curtis on Campus, Chris Vickery reviews the new DreamWorks animated film, The Croods. Chris?
Thanks, Trevor, and welcome to Critics on Campus. I'm your host, Chris Vickery, alongside Logan Cobb. Logan, this time we actually only have one movie as we're starting to do a weekly movie review segment instead of a bi-weekly one, which is very exciting. But we got a pretty interesting movie this time around, The Croods, which is DreamWorks' latest animation. And it's got some pretty big names attached to it. Ryan Reynolds, Nick Cage, and Emma Stone. So some pretty high-value Hollywood property in here, alongside some pretty interesting directional steps for DreamWorks Animation. You got a prehistoric family, the Croods, and they're trying to survive this kind of proto-apocalypse. You know, the world is a very turbulent place, and they're trying to stay alive when there's a lot of things bigger than them that want to eat them. And a really interesting story and a really interesting step for DreamWorks to take. What do you think of this one?
Well, I really liked the movie. I thought it progressed very well. And sometimes with animation movies, it doesn't happen. It's slow, but this, it progressed very well. It had fast-paced action. It had good segments of character development. And overall, I thought the story was just pieced together very well. My only real complaint is some of the casting. While they did have big names, it never really clicked as a whole. I mean, Ryan Reynolds was good, but maybe someone else could have been better, created a different dynamic. Nicolas Cage, he just didn't do it for me. He did a good job, but he just didn't do it for me. And Emma Stone I thought was fine. Some of the animation, though, with her character, and while I get that they were going with a Neanderthal-type family with the Croods and more of a modern-type guy with Guy, I still thought that her character was just a little too manly for this sweet voice that's coming out of her. But I really liked the characters. I liked the comedy that was in there. It was a movie really for all ages, which animation movies do a good job of. They do a good job of appealing to an entire family, which includes the parents who are older and want a little bit something more raunchy at times. But this movie has some good mother-in-law jokes in there, and I liked that. But there were some parts that just didn't quite do it for me, but I did like it. But what did you think?
It's one of those movies that definitely could have gone either way. I really wasn't sure what to expect from the previews, so I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. I will agree some of the voice acting did seem a little out of the box, a little stock character, if you will, which is surprising, especially with such big talent. But really, the thing that just blew me away was this movie's ability to really hit on all cylinders. The funny parts were funny. The touching moments were really touching. They knew how to tug on the heartstrings, and they knew when to make it light. And the action was really phenomenal. The animation overall just felt really all-encompassing. And talk about a beautiful movie. The visuals are really something to take in with this. And not just the quality of the visuals, but a lot of the design of the characters and of the creatures. This is not, you know, your textbook prehistoric era. It takes a lot of creative license, and it's fun to see where they go with it. So overall, this is a movie that really, as you were saying earlier, helps it to step out of the shadow of Pixar and put itself on the forefront as a real powerhouse in animation.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's an exciting step for DreamWorks to take, I think. But out of 5 stars, what would you give this one?
Well, again, some of the casting just didn't click for me. And I don't want to take away from the story, but that really took me out of it sometimes. And as you pointed out earlier, they lost focus. Like, you thought many times it would be Eep's story, which is Emma Stone's character. But a lot of times it was Nick Cage's character. And so with that, it kind of took me back a little bit. But I'm going to say 3 stars, but it is a very good movie.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give it 4 just because, again, it's a beautiful movie. And they really did nail the story this time, which is not always a guarantee with DreamWorks or even Pixar, as we've seen lately. So that was really impressive to me. 4 stars, and either way, definitely a movie worth seeing in theaters. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm Chris Vickery alongside Logan Cobb. Stay tuned next time for more movies. As always, this segment is brought to you by Carmike Cinemas. Back to you.
The Wilmington Police Department is continuing to investigate after issuing a public notification of a phone scam circulating throughout our region. Scammers have been calling businesses and individuals claiming to be with Duke Energy, then threatening to immediately cut off the customer's power unless they pay by phone with a prepaid cash card. Officials say this has been happening in Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. Anyone who receives such a call should refuse to comply and notify the police immediately.
Thanks again for joining us here at Seahawks Central News.
Don't forget, Seahawks Central News airs every day at 5 and 6 p.m. Stay tuned for Trey Owings and Seahawks Central Sports on the half hour.
Be sure to visit our Facebook page and tealtv.org to catch all of our past episodes. Until next time, I'm Trevor Bray.
And I'm Anna Phillips saying so long, Seahawks.